Do I believe John and Patsy were involved in their daughter's death? Yes, I do. Do I think Patsy killed JonBenet? Yes, I do. I think she was 80% or 90% to John's 10 or 20% involvement. I wanted to believe over the years that John and Patsy were innocent, and I didn't want to think a mother could harm her own child. Over the years, I looked into all the documents on Candy Rose, and many years passed with me still believing that Patsy was the killer, and I really wanted to think the opposite. I don't think this murder was necessarily complicated naturally, but it was made complicated by Patsy and John. I think this is really a relatively straightforward case with the unknown DNA saving them from being prosecuted. I think the unknown DNA will turn out to be unrelated, if it can ever be figured out, and an innocuous reason as to why the DNA was there will be revealed. But I could be wrong and look stupid, and it'll turn out to be the real killer's DNA. I think if it does turn out to be a friend or acquaintance of John's, he will use his regular deflection tactics and relish the opportunity to blame another new person for being the killer. I'm not a psychologist, so disclaimer here, but I think Patsy Ramsey may have had obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. I think she was obsessed with perfectionism, organization, and control. I base that on stuff that I've read about her and her daughter being in beauty pageants. I think she was trying to live her fantasy through JonBenet, and there were rumors she would get angry and burst into a rage if things didn't go her way. I think the original person investigators believed committed the crime was likely correct, but maybe the bedwetting theory was not. Patsy Ramsey writing the ransom note makes sense, and she couldn't be conclusively ruled out of being the writer of the note. I think Patsy lashed out in a fit of rage and she killed JonBenet, and John, having no alibi and being in the home at the time, probably thought he would also be accused of involvement and was scared they both would go to prison, so they both had to think their way out of it. I think both of them likely were drawn to each other because they're likely similar in many ways. I think John is a sociopath, but I think he was the one under control by Patsy in this situation. The garrote, which was a wooden handle that was a broken paintbrush handle that came from Patsy's art room, which was in the basement near the wine cellar. This doesn't mean Patsy is guilty, but this is another question mark, in my opinion, that could be put against Patsy being involved and increases the possibility of her involvement. A type of duct tape that was sold, which was not a common type of tape sold in McGuckin's hardware store in Boulder, where Patsy shopped and bought items from. The store did not hold a record of what items Patsy had purchased. No photo of JonBenet with duct tape over her mouth has ever been released to the public, but fibers consistent with Patsy's clothing were reported as evidence. Red/black fibers consistent with a jacket Patsy wore on Christmas night were found on the duct tape placed on JonBenet's mouth. UPI reported a fiber on the sticky side of the tape matched her clothing. Consistent is not the same as match, but I think it's coincidental. But I guess it's arguable this is a sign of Patsy's guilt. The pineapple timeline is interesting considering autopsy documentation and later reporting said JonBenet had recently eaten pineapple, but John and Patsy didn't remember giving it to her. Some news outlets reported that Patsy's fingerprints were on the bowl, which for me doesn't mean a great deal personally because it's in her house. I think the ransom note points more to Patsy than anyone else, and that's not even really based on the handwriting. The verbiage and the syntax, I think, feel more feminine, and the writer comes off overly nice, where I don't think a kidnapper would go to this level, considering Patsy's pen and paper were used to create the ransom note. I think maybe they'd have had the foresight to have already written the ransom note if it was planned, and JonBenet being found dead doesn't really corroborate with the note. Patsy watched movies like most people, and I'm not sure if the movie quotes taken from movies such as Speed, Ransom, and Dirty Harry are a huge indicator of Patsy's or John's guilt. But it's interesting that a Christmas letter Patsy wrote in 1995 has a movie quote in it that says, "All work and no play makes John a dull boy," which was taken from The Shining, and Jack was replaced with John. The $118,000 bonus and the SBTC that some believe might mean Saved by the Cross or Subic Bay Training Center, where John was stationed at some point in the Navy, might indicate the family's guilt. Some handwriting experts, perhaps pro-Ramsey innocence or having a bias, may believe that the handwritten ransom note is not Patsy's, and vice versa for the pro-guilt side having a bias, but I think the handwriting itself doesn't particularly make her look more guilty than the presentation of the words. The DNA is the question mark, but the DNA now has been degraded, and I heard the DNA is a very small amount and was mixed, but I don't know how much in nanograms, and I'm not a DNA expert by any means, so I can't really comment, and I heard that it barely got into the CODIS to be used. I heard it's possibly being attempted to be retested soon by the Boulder investigators. I don't know the truth on that, but it's just what I've heard. I personally still believe Patsy is the killer, and I've heard theories about Burke and the Stein son. Whilst intriguing, I found that cases are generally more simple than they might be perceived to be by people on the internet, and usually the added complexity is often not natural and added later to the case. You usually can't go wrong with logic and common sense, and sometimes the person of interest who fits like a glove is not the actual killer. So it is possible, considering the case isn't officially solved, that someone else other than the Ramseys did it, but John's deflections and his demeanor for me makes him look like he's trying to defend his reputation and to continue to protect his legacy along with his family's in relation to the murder of his daughter. In the future, I will do more in-depth videos on this case, but for now I just wanted to give my 2 cents on the matter. Thanks for watching.